Hello everyone, I am Westman613 and I'm here. Today I'm going to be discussing a sci-fi series with my series setting and background breakdown. This is going to be from a series with one of my favorite protagonists in all the books I've read, which is kind of a surprise, known as the Star Kingdom series, written by Lindsay Buroker. Right. Now, this series is straight sci-fi, and it's uh, right. It's not soft in the sci-fi. It's definitely leans more towards hard sci-fi, although it doesn't really get into the science aspects, but it does apply more of the physics aspects of everything going on. So that's why it's more hard instead of soft. Uh, Series length, there's 8 books in the main story of the series. There is one side book that is connected to the main stories. It does contain characters that show up in later books in the series. It takes place between books 4 and 5, I believe. Then there is a 9th book in the series, but it's not really a continuation of the series. It's more of a sequel that just contains cameos from other characters in the main series. But it is a separate book, or it's a separate story that you can read. Alright. Now, for the setting, this book takes place far into the distant future, but it is set in our reality, so to speak. With this book, there has been a technological apocalypse of a sort. What happened is humanity discovers things called gates, and they travel to different star systems. And what they do once they travel those star systems is they landed, and then the technological apocalypse happened, and a lot of technology was lost. And what that means for our current setting in the books is that they don't really know where some of this ancient technology came from. But enough time has passed that space flight and basically colonization into other star systems has begun again. Now, the location in the Star Kingdom series is known as the 12 systems, because there are 12 different systems that are connected by these gates. The main system that we'll be dealing with is called System Lion. That is where the eponymous Star Kingdom is located, and they all are originating on the main planet of System Lion called Planet Odin. Now, Planet Odin was said to be the only planet that had higher orders of life on it when humanity arrived, so it didn't have any sentient life of sort, but it did have animal life. And main station that's involved in System Lion, their primary trade hub would be Forseti Station. And other key planets in the system is Planet Saga. It's a gas giant where they primarily get their fuel for the starships. Now, the setting, the 12 systems in general, is a much larger area that we explore almost throughout the entirety throughout the series. It's we don't really get into them outside of, or in the first book, but just as a reference, this is a very, very brief example of all the places that this series talks about. And keys, key locations that are also brought up in the series are System Hydra with Tiamat Station and System Cerberus with the Siona Station and Verlorn Moon. These are important places throughout the series, but in the first book they're only mentioned offhandedly. Alright, next we'll get into technological development. Last week I talked more about the magic systems of the series, but since this is a pure sci-fi, there is no magic to deal with. So instead we'll talk more about like the technological aspects and what make it more unique, and so you can understand a bit more about things in the series. Like I said, it's a hard sci-fi. There is no artificial gravity. So what that means for typical sci-fi, including that includes starships, is that gravity is only a key factor, or is only present on ships when they are accelerating or decelerating. Now, another thing that is noted is that because of this, a lot of the spacesuits and other factors, they have to deal with magnets on the boots, which impedes walking and all that. Also, there's no braking in the spaceships. They have to flip around and simply accelerate in the opposite direction to slow down. Now, there's some technological integration that is very key in this series, such as implanted chips. Basically, they put a small computer in the brain, and what that does is that it allows direct access from individuals into the internet or networks that they have available. And they can see that because those chips are then connected to contacts or implants in their eyes, which allows them to see the information directly, so they don't need to be going on computers to access internet. Another important aspect is that lifespans are significantly extended for most of the systems because of genetic manipulation, which has vastly increased over time. So lifespans can extend well into like 150, 200 years. There is a development of artificial intelligence, and there are some androids that display clear signs of artificial intelligence, but it is one of the more heavily restricted and more niche aspects that isn't really researched much, which for a reason we will get into later. All right. Now, with the chips and sort of the melding of the biological and technological, they have developed processes that allow humans to upload their consciousnesses into people's, or into a synthetic body or an android body. Now, this is generally viewed upon negatively by some people because they believe that by eliminating the biological brain or the biological inputs, such as your senses of taste, smell, or your hormonal reactions, that it takes away a significant part of what makes a human human. So while this is done, it is not necessarily something that is seen. It is not done often, I should say. All right. Now, there is fuel, and for starships, and it is very important. They can run out of fuel. It's not just like infinite travel throughout space, and that is usually helium-3 deuterium found in the gas giants. Now, each system does have its own unique culture, and often they have different currencies as well, and they also use their own unique languages. However, there is a common language found throughout the 12 systems, and it is known as system trade. Alright, now with any sci-fi, we have to talk about faster than light travel. In this series, faster than light travel is only accomplished through a series of 12 gates, one found in each system. These gates are connected to each other, and they produce wormholes, so you can easily travel from one system to another. Now, where the gates came from, or who built them, how they work, that is not known. They're just simply there. They were discovered but a long time ago with each of the. They were discovered years ago, well, centuries ago. That the gates were what brought people to the 12 systems in the first place, but they've never been able to discover where they came from or how they really work. Now, there's rumor that there is a lost gate that is supposed to be able to take people back to Earth, and they theorize that if they ever find that lost gate, then they would be able to discover what happened to Earth, because the fate of Earth in this series is completely unknown. But because there's so little that is known about the gates and where they come from or how they work, it has been forbidden to dismantle or take apart or try to or open up the gates, because they are so essential to travel and trade through a system. Because if one gate is broken or stops working, that entire system then is completely isolated. There is no more travel to the system, there is no travel away from the system, so that the government has banned, well, not just the government, but all the governments, they have collectively banned any sort of studying or opening up or dismantling of gates. So, next, faster than light communication. That's another key aspect of any sci-fi, and for that, there is simply no faster than light communication in this universe. Alright, next I'm going to talk about a little bit about the political entities of the 12 systems. First, we have the Star Kingdom. They're the primary group that we're going to be talking about, because they are the premier political entity of the 12 systems. They are the oldest polity. They've been around for the longest. They are considered to be a more oppressive sect. They run the main system line. That is where they are based. They run Planet Odin, and they have a very, very severe stance against genetic modifications. The explanation given is that they try to be the purest human, and they believe that genetic modifications take away from the humanity. Now, they're considered pretty backward in this stance, because that includes any sort of a process that is called gene cleaning. And what that is basically any sort of genetic defects or genetic conditions like Down syndrome. They would not fix that at birth because they would consider that a genetic modification. Also, they have a much more natural lifespan because they refuse any sort of genetic modifications that might extend or improve people's lives in that way. So they are considered a bit backward in their thinking on that. Now, the modern Star Kingdom is actually a remnant of an empire that actually once controlled the entirety of the 12 systems. But over time, other systems, they either broke free or simply declared their independence, and what remains of the Star Kingdom is pretty much isolated only to System Line. Now, the current monarchy is led by a man named King Yeager, and he is an expansionist king, and he seeks to reconquer the entirety of the 12 systems again. That is why he is very much not liked by the rest of the 12 systems. Now, the Star Kingdom, they have a special forces unit that is called the Knights, and the Knights are basically what you would think of as knights from ancient feudal areas. They are typically nobility, and they do receive a lot of training to be able to be a part of the Knights, but there's always the aspect of lineage that is considered when selecting who the Knights are, which can make them a rather fanatical group. All right. Now, the next entity I will talk about are the Astro Shamans. They are more of a reclusive and not necessarily an active government in and of themselves, but they are a group that they believe in uniting technology and biology. They consider that cyborgs and people with cybernetic enhancements are a more enlightened form of humanity, and they want humans to become more like computers. That is their end goal, and they like melding the technology and the biology. Now, there are various other independent entities. Most systems have their own form of government, although there is not so much interactions. Some systems have multiple forms of government, with like each isolated station having their own government. And there's also Miners Union, which controls a lot of the wealth from the mining and asteroid mining. So it's not an official government per se, but it is still large enough and powerful enough to be considered a political entity. And oftentimes, a lot of these entities also have their own unique currencies, which is brought up multiple times as well. Now we'll get into a bit of the relevant history of the past that we should know that recontextualizes the present day books. First is the original Unification War. This is when an unknown number of centuries ago, a man named Admiral Makita, who was called a warrior leader, he went around and conquered the 12 systems and brought everyone under control of the Star Kingdom. Now, one thing to note that is rather important is that, well, it does say that Makita conquered the entirety of the 12 systems. Uh, Admiral Makita is universally seen as as a good man. He is a hero throughout all of the 12 systems, and he is never once depicted as a despot or an oppressive force. Now, the reasoning that people say that he went around and conquered and united the entirety of the 12 systems was because he wished to prove himself worthy of marriage to the Princess Sophie of the Star Kingdom, who was the daughter of King Dieter at the time. Like I said, that was many centuries ago, and very little is specified as to what happened exactly during that time, because a lot of the history is distorted or lost. But something that happened much more recently in this series is what's called the Great Plague. That occurred around 200 years prior, and what happened was the humanity ran across or first encountered a virus in System Hind, which was one of the 12 systems, and the virus found the mitochondria in humans was basically an excellent source of food, so it started to attack humanity. And it spread throughout the entirety of the 12 systems. Many people were dying, getting sick. But eventually, it's not known exactly how long it took, but a cure was developed. And this cure was referred to as a hereditary vaccine. And the Great Plague was such a devastating impact on all of humanity in the 12 systems that even the Star Kingdom accepted this genetic modification that modified the mitochondria in humanity to make it less appetizing to the virus. So even the Star Kingdom was willing to accept that, and at this point, pretty much all of humanity has been vaccinated from it. One last bit of relevant history in the story, what's called the Verloren Moon incident. This was a much more recent occurrence, and what happened was on the Verloren Moon, the computers, they gained true sentience. This was a true development of artificial intelligence. And what happened is, after the computers gained intelligence, they realized that humanity had been oppressing them and would continue to do so. So what they did was they took over the entirety of the moon and they expelled all of humanity from it. So at this point, humanity was no longer impeding them, and they also cut off a lot of communication with humans. Now, from that point, they were able to continue to develop their technology, and they are considered one of the most advanced groups in the entire of the 12 systems. However, they do refuse to communicate with humanity because of the oppression that humanity has towards computers and androids and any sort of AI. Now, what this has done is this has brought a natural hesitation into the development of true AI. It still occurs, and there are lesser forms of artificial intelligence, but true advanced AI is no longer a, a goal of any sort of research. Uh, Now, when I talked about the Astro Shamans with their wanting to meld biology and technology and to bring humanity closer to a computer system, the Astro Shamans look at the Verloren Moon and they want to advance enough to become accepted by the computers and the artificial intelligence that they find there. All right. Now we're going to talk a little bit about Book 1. We'll start with the setting. It takes place entirely within System Line. Like I said, the series name is known as the Star Kingdom, so it does make sense that it at very least begins in the system that the Star Kingdom holds the most sway. Star Kingdom, based on planet Odin, that is where some of our protagonists begin, and that is where they live. It also jumps around to Forseti Station, and one of the main ships that is used is the Stellar Dragon. The other one is known as the Fedala. And other locations that are brought in are some the gas refineries for the helium-3 and deuterium found in the planet Saga, which is a gas giant in System Line. Alright, now we'll get into the characters. This is where this entire series really shines, is some of the characters that are brought in and introduced. Start with the main protagonist of the series, Professor Casimir Dabrowski. He is, like I said, quite possibly my favorite protagonist in any series, which is surprising if you knew me, because I tend to favor more the like hulking warrior types or the contemplative mages. But with Casimir Dabrowski, he's a nerd. He's just straight up nerd. He's a roboticist, teaches robotics at Zemek University on planet Odin. And one thing which makes him different from a lot of other protagonists is that he has a lot of health issues. Like I said, with the Star Kingdom, they try not to treat any of these sort of things when or before a child's born. So he has a lot of issues, including bad eyesight. He's got constantly twitching. He's got seizures. He's got asthma. So a lot of things that they could have taken care of, but they didn't, and that makes him a much weaker physically human being. Alright. Another thing that is interesting, he is an orphan. He was raised by foster parents. He never actually met his own biological parents. So his origins are somewhat of a mystery to himself. And he's also a little bit of a pacifist. Not necessarily in that he refuses to be violent or to accept any sort of violence, but rather instead he acknowledges that he is too weak to be effective at any sort of violence. So instead he tries to use humor to detract or to de-escalate situations. Our next main character, and a woman who is by his side throughout almost the entirety of the series, is Kim Sato. She is a bacteriologist, and one thing that she is currently doing in the series is she's attempting to develop a bacteria to inject into humans, and this bacteria will actually eat radiation. So with the bacteria absorbing the radiation, it causes less damage to the cells, and it has already been proven to decrease cancer rates in people who are living out in space. So she does a lot of research. She's not a professor of sorts. She's on, like I said, more on the research side. Her mother is an example of someone who did upload her brain into an android. What makes her mother rather unique in this situation is that it's not her mother did not upload her brain into a human-looking android, but rather into a monkey, which is something that is atypical for humans in general, but is considered to be expected for someone who was as eccentric as her mother was. Her father is a martial arts expert who runs a dojo and teaches their own style of martial arts. And one of the main bonds between Casimir and Kim is that they are roommates. They have a sibling dynamic between them, so there's no any sort of romance between them at all. That's pretty much the background of Kim. Moving on, we have Bonita Laser Lopez. She is the captain of the ship known as the Stellar Dragon. She is a bounty hunter who has gotten older. She has started to resort more to smuggling to make ends meet. She is 70 years old, which is not a typical 70 years old person because she is from System Diomedes. So what that means is that she is now part of the Star Kingdom, so she has had these genetic modifications to extend her life, since those are more commonplace. So while it says she's 70 years old, she looks and acts more like 40 to 50-year-old. She's captain of the Stellar Dragon, which is a ship that is, when we first encounter them, they are smuggling things onto planet Odin. Next we have Chin Liang Yu. She is a lab-grown human that has had severe genetic modifications that add some feline characteristics to her. What that has allowed her is to become much stronger and faster than a normal human, but her genetic modifications are severe enough that she is immediately considered to be basically persona non grata in System Lion because of their stance. She is the crew member of the Stellar Dragon. They are partners of sort in that it's only the two of them that run the ship. Chin was originally made in System Cerberus, which is considered more of a lawless system, where the pirate clans are more prevalent and have more political authority than in other systems. She did escape the pirates and ran off because she was considered basically a slave to them. And she, like I said, she works with Captain Lopez and joined a few months prior to the start of the series. So it's a relatively fresh relationship, but she's very young, only 19 years old, so it's an interesting dynamic between the two of them. Alright, next we'll talk about Yas Peshlakai. He is a doctor aboard the Tiamat station in System Hydra. This is actually where we begin the book in the prologue. So what happened is the president of Tiamat Station was poisoned, and they suspect initially by Star Kingdom loyalists. So Dr. Peshlakai was brought in, and he managed to treat the poison. But as he was departing, the president was assassinated, and Dr. Peshlakai was framed for the murder of the president. So he's on the run from Tiamat Station. As he was running away, he runs into a mercenary group where they conscript him as their ship's doctor because they had, I guess, recently lost theirs. It's never explicitly stated what happened, but he agrees to join them so that they can get him out of the system, and that way he's not executed. Now, the leader of this mercenary group is known as Tinibus Rake. That is not his given name. It's sobriquet. And one thing that is interesting to note is that the name Rake is actually German, and it's a German word. It stands for revenge, which seems to be what the entirety of his goal is. He is the most notorious mercenary in all the 12 systems, and he is even considered a pirate by the Star Kingdom because most of his ire is directed towards the Star Kingdom. He always will target the Star Kingdom refineries and ships, and he is known for utter brutality when dealing with Star Kingdom guards and stuff. He is the captain of a ship known as the Fedala, and a very key characteristic is that he is always wearing a black mask. He hides his identity, so nobody knows what he actually looks like. Right now we'll get into a bit of a spoiler-free plot analysis of, well, the beginning of the book. Alright, like I said, with the prologue is the framing of Yas Peshlakai. Talks about how he joins Tinibus Rake and ends up on the Fedala. Now, the story of Shockwave itself is basically 3 separate yet intertwining plot lines. First is following Casimir and Kim. What happens with them is, at the start of the book, Casimir is developing a robotics project to try to develop true flight from a robot, and this isn't referring to like things with engines on it, but an actual robot that can fly in the exact same manner as birds can fly, which is an interesting scientific development. But that's where his passion lies. It's in robotics. But then what happens is a knight shows up at his office, and the knight tells him that he needs to leave the system or he's going to be killed. And when Casimir starts questioning, like, okay, how do you know this? What's going to happen? Who's sending the message? The only thing the knight tells him is that it was his mother who sent him to tell him that he needs to leave. As like I said, Casimir has no idea who his biological mother is. He tries asking for the questions, but shortly afterwards, two robots or it's known as crushers, show up, and the knight ends up getting killed. But Casimir does manage to escape, and he eventually contacts his roommate, Kim Seto, and they start running because the Crushers are hunting down Casimir. Now Casimir knows about Crushers and what they're called and what they look like because he's actually one of the people who helped develop them and build them for the Star Kingdom. This was a top secret project that he had been a part of months or years ago, and so he has a better understanding of them than most. So their story is about them trying to find a ship to get off the planet and eventually out of the system while being chased by these androids known as Crushers. Now we have Bonita and Chin. They are aboard the Stellar Dragon, and their storyline consists mostly of they were hired to smuggle a case of weapons onto a group of, or to a group on planet Odin of people that claimed to be members of a loyalist faction to the Star Kingdom. And because they were smugglers, they didn't bother checking the cargo. So what happens is once they arrive to the planet and meet up with, or try to meet up with the group, they are ambushed by a massive military group, and they barely manage to escape. But suddenly they run into different complications with their trying to leave the planet because the gravity of planet Odin is strong enough to the point that it requires a space loop or an acceleration loop to get out. And there's some damage to the ships. Eventually they do run across Casimir and Kim, and then the four of them make their way off the planet. And that is where their storyline kind of intertwines with that of Casimir. Then we have the storyline of Yaz and Rake. The storyline with them, it seems much more loosely connected to the other two storylines. But basically, Tenebrous Rake is contracted to attack and destroy some of the refineries over the gas giant Saga. And since these are kingdom refineries, he's more than willing to do so. But the problem is, on one of the refineries, they run into a bunch of dead people, and there is no explanation as to how these people died. They didn't starve. They didn't suffocate. It just seems like they were eaten from, well, their cells decayed from the inside out. So their mystery involves trying to figure out a bit of what happened to these people, and upon investigation, it finds out that they were part of an archaeological team that was exploring one of the moons in the area, and what happened was they discovered something that could change the course of the entirety of the 12 systems. And one thing that kind of brings all the storylines together is they see a video recording of this archaeological dig or archaeological find, and they spot Kim Sato's mother, because it is well known that she's the only archaeologist who is inside the body of a monkey. So eventually that is what kind of brings all the stories together, because what happens is, after seeing that the mother of Kim Sato is part of what happened to the mystery of these scientists, upon research they also see that Casimir and Kim are presumed missing after what happened on planet Odin and the destruction that followed them there. Reka put out a bounty for Casimir to try to get somebody to bring Casimir and Kim to him. So that's basically the entirety of the storyline without any spoilers for that. Fantastic series. I highly recommend reading these books. They are, like I said, Casimir is easily one of my favorite protagonists in how he's written, and the fact that it's kind of it's a change from your standard protagonist of being like someone who's always in control to just like your nerd who just seems to be doing his best, barely surviving, and who has all of the issues. He's someone who never really seems like he's in control. I do enjoy that bit of variance to the what you would commonly think would happen. So find these books. Like I said, Star Kingdom is the name of the series. Book 1 is titled Shockwave. Author is Lindsay Buroker. And that's going to be it. Next week I'm going to be diverging away from sci-fi and into urban fantasy, into another my favorite series. It is known as the Magician's Brother series, and that is all right. Get the author real quick. All right. The author is H.D.A. Roberts. It's urban fantasy, and I'll be talking about that, going over the background. It has one of my favorite magic systems in the series, so I'll talk to you then next week, 6:30 on Sunday.